What is up, my friends and fellow BusyBees? Today, we have a very exciting episode. We have a BusyBees and business strategy session, which you may have heard me speak about before on the podcast. This is where I meet one-on-one with one of you BusyBees that are currently facing a challenge or a barrier in your business or soon-to-be business or maybe soon-to-be business side hustle. I don't know. Selling your painted and refinished furniture. So we basically just talk about what you're currently facing, what you've done to try and address it so far, and then discuss a plan of action that you can get through whatever it is that currently has you at a bit of a standstill. So I would like to welcome my lovely guest here today, Laura, who has reached out with an issue that I know that a lot of you out there are facing. I've been there myself. Some days I still am. Laura let me know that she is a recent graduate from the Lurker to the Hobbyist in the Furniture Refinishers Success Spectrum. So number one, big congrats to you, Laura, for taking that leap. It's very exciting. And if there's any listeners right now who have no idea what I'm talking about, make sure you pop over to episode number 45, and that outlines the Furniture Refinishers Success Spectrum journey. And then you can identify what stage that you're currently at and what you can do to move forward to the next stage in the spectrum if you so choose. All right, so let's jump right into today's episode. So welcome, Laura. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Perfect. So can you just give the audience just kind of a rough overview of what inspired you to reach out today, what you're currently facing, and what you're looking for some feedback and help with?
Okay, I've been listening to your podcast for a few months. I think I just searched refinishing or something like that in my podcast app and found you that way. And I've also been watching tons of videos on YouTube of people flipping furniture. I've actually been sort of like getting pieces for several years, but always with the like vague intention of fixing them up and
Yeah.
then just sort of using them as is without fixing them up because it just didn't seem like ever the right time. And then someone was listing a old table, like 1890s table for free on Nextdoor,
Mm,
and I snatched it up and I was like, I will refinish it. But since it was like a piece that had been in their family, I didn't feel like I just wanted to wing it.
right.
I felt I needed, even though it wasn't my family heirloom, I needed to do it justice. So I
Yeah.
didn't want to get in there and just be a complete rookie. So I then started to tackle the projects in my, some of them in my house that I had been meaning to get to that were less perhaps like historical. And I made my way up to that table, which is now done. And then I started acquiring pieces with the idea of like, maybe I could sell this.
Yeah.
I have now sold three pieces, and my porch is jammed with other things that are in the works. Space is a real issue. We have no garage or workshop, so I have to really work with what I've got. But did I answer the question, or was there part of it I left out?
Yeah, no, that's perfect. And I can tell you're getting that itch for more, which is very very normal.
Yeah.
Once you do the first one or two and you're like, oh, and you start seeing all the pieces that you can't see them go. So that's perfect. So I'm so glad that you're jumping in and that you're enjoying it. And that's awesome that you've had a few sales under your belt already too. So you had shared with me a screenshot of some of your photos as well as one of the listings that you had up, which I believe was already sold, those nightstands.
Yes.
And so I went through and just took a look at what I could see from the photos as well as the description that was up there. And I wanted to start out by like going over some things I think you're doing really well, because I think number one, it's good to know so you can continue to do those things, as well as for people listening, if they don't already know to do that, that they can take those tips with them as well. First thing, talking about like the photos, so there was two of them, the sewing machine that you had done and the nightstands as well. They had really great lighting. Like I don't know if that was super intentional,
Yeah.
but it was,
Yes. Yes.
daytime lighting. You had a good neutral backdrop. I think it was some white built-ins or something like that. And it really highlighted the pieces really nicely. You were also, putting good staging on there. It wasn't, sometimes you see pieces and they're really busy, like there's a lot of decor and stuff going on, which maybe looks pretty, but can distract, I think personally, at least from the pieces themselves. So when
Mhm.
you're trying to make sales and stuff, I think you're doing a great job of that. Like the things that are on there are objects that people would already be putting onto their pieces if they were bringing it into their home. So it helps them just to, visualize it in their space and that kind of thing. And just helps to
Okay.
grab their attention too when they're scrolling and be like, ooh, what's that? So I think
Okay, cool.
that's perfect. A couple of the other ones, I want to say the single nightstand. It was in, I think maybe nighttime lighting. So I would avoid that if, I mean, sometimes we're limited with our schedules and when we can get the opportunity to take photos and things like that.
Right.
So if you can, I would recommend continuing with that space. With that daytime lighting, it seemed like a good neutral space and room. You had a really cool carpet under as well, which was like, I felt like didn't distract from the pieces. It complemented it well. So I think that looks great. I feel like that's one thing. If someone's going to put a carpet in their staging photos, I feel like that's one thing that can be really hard to like find the right one because
Hmm.
is
Mhm.
it too basic? Is there too much going on? So I love that carpet, just a side note. And then, so we have the staging. And then on the photos themselves, like I could see you had taken pictures from multiple angles, you were pulling the drawers out. Essentially, you're not having any surprises when a buyer would be coming to pick up your pieces. So I think that's awesome. And you had spoken about, wanting to be transparent about the drawers didn't have glides kind of in the
Yeah.
design of the piece and just making that fully apparent to people, taking a photo of it. I think that's great. Again, it doesn't need to be like something that you spend like a lot of time talking about in the ad, but just having it there, stating that it's pictured and that kind of thing. It's just going
Uh-huh.
to avoid wasting your time ultimately, right? If someone comes and for whatever reason that's a sore spot for them or something,
Yeah.
then they know what they're getting into.
Right.
And then some other great things. I saw you were using all of the, what's the word for them? Like the categories that you would fill
Oh
in
yeah,
on the
yeah.
ad. So yeah,
Keywords maybe. Hmm.
exactly. Yeah. So like putting the condition, the materials, the decor style. You got the correct decor style. I think I would say for some pieces, you could even skip that part if it's a piece that could, lean in multiple directions, depending on kind of like how you styled it and that kind of thing. Sometimes like a piece could look a little bit more modern or it could kind of lean like farmhouse and that kind of thing. So that would be a recommendation kind of moving forward.
Okay.
Because it
Hmm.
could be limiting, I guess, is the point that I'm
Yeah.
trying to make. And then your caption, you included a lot of great stuff. So you had highlighting that they're solid wood because that's something that would be a selling feature for people. You had the dimensions, you had forms of payment that you accept, you had that you offer delivery. So you're basically answering any questions that somebody might have looking at the ad. And again, saving your time. So they're not just like messaging you back and forth, asking things that
Yeah.
you could have preemptively put in there. So that's awesome. And I saw that you have, if this ad is still up, they're still available, which is something I used to always add into my ads because you get endless questions about that, don't you?
Used to,
Yeah.
but now you don't say it anymore.
I kind of don't as much now, only because I find as a user on Marketplace specifically, because that's the only place that I currently, other than my website, put my pieces up. Um,
Uh-huh.
if you have a slip of the finger, I find that you can send, because it pre-populates that message to the seller, like, "Hi, Laura, is this piece still
Yeah.
available?" So I just kind of it's almost so like for my own sanity, I don't put it anymore because then if I have it there and people message, I'm like, why are you wasting my time?
Okay, I get it. Yeah.
But I do think it's a good thing to have in there, and it just fell off of my template at one point or another. But I think
Mhm.
it's good to have there, and for the people that are, reading thoroughly, it'll save some time.
Mhm.
Okay, and so a couple of different things, kind of like three pillars that I wanted to talk about in terms of like what we can do to update like the listings that you're currently doing, a couple recommendations for ways to just get more exposure to those listings. And then you had
Okay.
also mentioned like, is it the types of pieces that I'm choosing? Is that what's making them not sell as quick? So I had a couple of ideas or things, I guess, kind of things that I stick to when I'm looking for pieces. But again, too, you're in a different country, you're in a different
Mhm.
everything than me too. So a good thing to note too is that the markets can be totally different depending where you are. So, grain of salt with everything I say. But
Sure.
first question I had for you. So, you had walked through kind of your where you started with your pricing and then shared that you had been slowly lowering that over time to essentially try to get them sold. And you mentioned at one point that like one of the pieces felt like a lot of work for what you did based on how much you ultimately ended up getting and how much you
Yeah.
profited,
Yeah.
which I can definitely relate. I've definitely been there as well, especially if you get one of those problem pieces that you keep having to go back to and do little things to, and then ultimately when it sells, you're like, oh, that's it. Okay, great. So my first question is how did you come up with those prices that you ended up choosing? Like, what was your process in that?
For the singer table, it was tricky because there's not that many out there, and the prices that I saw on Marketplace were really all over the place, and I followed some and they didn't necessarily sell quickly, so I didn't know what was reasonable, but the it seems unlikely that I'm going to do that project again, so I guess I don't need to worry about it. But the nightstands, I based on what I saw other people listing at, but a bit cheaper, thinking these pieces were a little bit unusual in that they were handmade, a little odd. And so
Okay.
while I see in my area nightstands listed at around, let's say, 200 on the upper end for a reasonable set of nightstands,
Hmm.
in good condition, I put mine at 120, being that I don't have like a following, and they were a little unusual, not like with the drawers, and they
Right.
were clearly handmade and not necessarily in a good way.
Okay, awesome. So that's great that you're looking around in your market too, specifically to see, where things are at, and following them as well is a great idea just to see, yeah, like are those based at the price that it's listed for? Is that piece moving quickly or what's happening? So that's awesome. Glad to hear you're doing that. And you also, I think, mentioned at one point in the message, you were looking at how much the cost of your supplies cost too, and factoring
Yeah.
that in,
Hmm.
which is great. Because yeah, a lot of the time, I think, especially early on, like when you're not looking at things from like a business perspective or intending to make it a business or whatever, it's just all new. I know for me personally, I was just looking at the bare cost of how much was the piece when I first bought it, how
Yeah.
much are the supplies I put into it, and then anything over that essentially was like profit. So that was amazing because I was just enjoying doing it basically in my free
Right.
time. And then taking into account the market and all those things. And then also maybe as this becomes a more consistent thing that you're doing too, wanting to factor in your own time, whatever that looks like for you, whether you'd prefer like an hourly rate based on how long you work on it, or even just being cognizant of how long these pieces are taking. Some people like set a timer and that kind of thing. Um,
Mm,
I don't have the brain power to remember to turn a timer on and off to keep accurate
sure.
timing, but over time, I've come to realize how long specific projects tend to take me based on, size or type of furniture piece and that kind of thing. So that could be something to take into account too as you move forward is to pay yourself for that, especially if you decide down the line that you want to make it more of a business and stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
So one thing I wanted to kind of just say off the get-go too, it's it's kind of like almost the most unhelpful thing to say, but I do think it needs to be said is that sometimes pieces just don't sell that quick, and it has like nothing to do with the piece you did, the work you did, your photos, your listing, anything like that. It can simply just be the fact that there's nobody in your area looking for a piece like that at that time.
Uh-huh.
So I do think it's an important kind of like just mindset shift because I mean, I
Yeah.
have pieces currently listed that have been well over a year that they've been sitting, which is not a great feeling and, clogs up your space. I'm currently sitting
Yeah.
in my guest room that has one, two, three, four pieces sitting in here. So,
Uh-huh.
so just kind of having that mindset shift of basically just not letting you doubt yourself and your abilities and the
Yeah.
work that you've done as a result, because that's, I know, kind of the first thing that I go to is obviously nobody wants it because I did a bad job on it, and having
Right.
those negative thoughts and that self-talk.
And I do think that was what part of what led me to lower the price as quickly as I did, because
Right.
I just couldn't really. It was hard not to be preoccupied when I knew it was there. I could see the number of clicks it was getting, and yet it was like radio silence with those nightstands for at least a week, and it made me nervous. So I almost lowered the price just to get rid of the anxiety.
Yeah, 100%. I totally get that. And yeah, and especially if you're seeing the numbers, because sometimes you'll put something up and it's right place, right time. There's lots of people looking for that type of a thing or whatever, and you see like so many eyes on it. But if you don't see shares or saves, or you're not getting those messages coming in, you're obviously going to assume that it's because of whatever the quality or whatever it is. So just know that that's not a unique feeling to you.
Hmm.
And I would say like 90% of the time, 95% of the time, that has nothing to do with any of it. And it can just be the stars didn't align, for the thing to get sold in that moment. So I'm glad to hear that you are looking into the insights, though, because that is one of my recommendations. Because I think a lot of the time it isn't even the price that is the deterrent for getting that sale. Especially, I think the numbers that you shared, I think that's very reasonable, especially taking into account, you looked at the market, you went lower than the market. And so to even continue to lower it from there, I think is a good indicator that the price probably isn't the thing that's holding people back. But looking at the insights sometimes is helpful because you can see, if there are a lot of people who have saved it, sometimes a good tactic is to do a marginal decrease.
Hmm.
Sometimes I recommend too having like a range of what you would be willing to accept for that piece, especially on Marketplace, because I find on that platform people aren't really going there to pay full price of what's listed. Like everyone's trying to negotiate,
Yeah.
even if it is like, apparent that it's a business and someone selling like that. I think it's just kind of the platform. People are looking to get a deal. So
Yeah.
you could take that into account too as you list the piece. What would I be willing to take? Here's the range, and starting on that higher range. So if you do see people saving it and you see lots of people with eyes on it and stuff, so maybe there's people that are like, oh, I'd like this, but it's a little bit out of my price range. Maybe, taking 5, 10 bucks, 15, whatever, off of it might be that thing that incites the person to look back at it and take that plunge. And then also too, I always like to think about when I'm listing the piece, and then also if a piece is sitting for a while, consider the season. I guess you're in the South, so it's warm all the time, but in Canada at least, there's different times of the year when you just kind of know that people aren't prioritizing like redoing their home. We had a bit of a warm front here last week. It went from like 7 degrees to 30 degrees overnight for a few days.
Woo.
And I
Uh-huh.
was like, there's nobody on Marketplace looking for pieces right now. Everyone is outside enjoying the warmth. So I
Uh-huh.
specifically did not list pieces within that period because I just knew it would probably get lost by the time people were
Yeah.
back. And inevitably it came back to 5 degrees and it's freezing out. So consider that too if there's any, or like holidays, if it's Christmas, like that kind of stuff, people are usually busier. So taking that into consideration as well, whether it be for when to or not to list your things, or just like in your head to be like things might not sell as quickly because it's this time of year, or just so it's kind of in the back of your mind.
Right.
And so you mentioned tags. Are you using tags in the back, like when you're listing the piece, when you
Yeah.
scroll to the bottom? Yes. Okay. Do you know kind of off the top of your head what kind of stuff you were including in there for the nightstands, for example?
Yeah, I was winging it, but I think I wrote wood. I wrote nightstand, handmade, modern, pair of nightstands, and not sure what else I put.
That's great. Highlighting, the material. Something I like to do too is like, I guess it's not considered a synonym, but like different things that people would refer to to that
Hmm.
thing as. So like with nightstands, sometimes I do nightstand, all one word, nightstand,
Uh-huh.
two different words, like
Yeah,
even
that's
sometimes if
smart.
people misspell things commonly, like
Right.
credenza, I'll do it a few different spellings, like because people just guess sometimes.
Yes.
And even putting like the function of that piece or the room that it would typically go
Oh,
in.
okay, bedroom.
Exactly. Bedroom, even living room, like some people might use it, on the side of their
Yeah, I
couch.
think I put end tables just in case they wanted to use
Yep.
it for that.
Exactly. End tables, as well as I don't know for certain, just in terms of like the algorithm in Facebook, and those change all the time, so I don't try and figure them out too hard. But if there is a difference between having like a tag that says black and then a tag that says nightstand and then having a tag that says black nightstand. I don't know if that
Mhm.
makes a difference in terms of it showing up if people are searching for those things, but I include all of those. I try to use up as many tags as I can, which gets a
Uh-huh.
little tedious when you're listing, but it could make the difference of your piece showing up in front of somebody or not.
Yeah.
That could be a thing to add. And even with like, sometimes I get like a little bit, my things might show up in searches that people are absolutely not looking for them. But like if I have a nightstand, I'll do table or something just super vague like that.
Yeah.
Because you never know too if someone might not specifically be looking for it, but they might see it and have like another room makeover or something that they're doing in the future that it catches their eye and they're like, oh, I should actually grab that now, even though I wasn't looking for that thing. You never know. So get crafty with those tags and it might basically just get it in front of more eyes and that kind of ups the
Yeah.
potential of the sale coming sooner.
Yeah. Okay. I can, yeah, definitely.
Oh, actually, sorry, there's one more thing I wanted to mention. Um, in terms of the caption. So, like I said, you have so many important things in there. There wasn't a whole lot that I could think of to improve that, but maybe adding some more descriptors to the title itself. You had a good one. I think it was matching solid wood nightstands.
Hmm.
That's gonna catch the attention of people that are looking for that for sure. But you could add in black modern wood nightstands or something like that. So if someone's looking for that specifically, maybe it catches their eye more. I don't know.
Hmm.
And then another thing that I like to recommend, especially when you have a couple of makeovers under your belt and you're starting to understand the process and the products and everything a lot more, you're maybe feeling a little bit more comfortable and confident in your abilities and the product that you're putting out there. You kind of have to like fake it till you make it with that one a little bit because I feel like you never feel fully confident. You always think like you could be doing better, but
Uh-huh.
um, including things that kind of show that you know what you're talking about in the ad and that it's a product that you created versus something that was sitting around in your house that you decided to sell off. So
Okay.
something that I usually start my ads with newly refinished, like
Okay.
newly refinished Singer sewing table, blah, blah, blah. Because that A tells people that there's no, damage to it, scratches, bumps. It hasn't been used in someone's home. And also, I like to include details about the process and the products that I use.
Okay.
So let me look around what I have in this room. So I have a console table. So newly refinished, neutral console table. I'd give the dimensions, and then table has been sanded and painted in fusion mineral paint in the color Cathedral Taupe, which is described as a whatever they say on the website that they describe the color as. 3 coats of polyurethane have been added for durability, that kind of thing. And I'll usually include the name of the products as well because it kind of shows you know what you're talking about. It shows you're using
Yeah.
quality products, and then people can look up the products too if they're interested. And if they're products that are specifically made for that use and things like that, I personally just think it adds like a layer of professionalism, and also people know that the quality is there in the product that they're buying. Um,
Yeah.
so that could help.
Yeah. Because when the buyers showed up, I told them something like, I bought it at a yard sale and I painted it. But then I felt sort of bad after that because like I really did a lot more than paint it, but I sort of downplayed it. But what
Yeah.
you're saying is kind of go the opposite, which is like play up the fact that yeah, like it's refinished, so you don't have to worry about it having some unknown problems.
Exactly. And again, it's like it is I always talk about mindset and stuff like that on the podcast because I think it just comes back to your mindset in the end. Like we having confidence in the work that we're doing, really understanding like it seems like we're not doing a lot when we say, "Oh, I painted that piece of furniture," or "I sanded and stained that furniture." But you have to consider too, how many hours of tutorials have you watched to figure out the proper process to do that? How many hours of the podcast have you listened to of picking up tips and tricks on how to get a good finish and how to sell that thing appropriately and all this time and energy? And it seems like when we sit down and we do it, even if some days you can get a makeover done in one day, so that might not seem like a lot of effort put in, and it might just be second nature to you what to do now. But that's like a time investment. That's a researching the products and everything investment that you're doing ahead of time to be able to get the product to the end result that it's at. So that's worth something, and that's worth, factoring into your pricing and stuff and kind of leaning into and having the confidence that you do know what you're doing. A lot of people wouldn't know where to start with making over a piece of furniture in general. So you kind of have that upper hand over it. And I encourage you to lean into that and to have confidence in what you're doing and lean into it.
Okay, I like that. Thanks.
You're welcome. Okay, so in terms of getting more eyes on the piece as well and getting more exposure to it if we're looking kind of higher level, not at the ad itself. I don't know, are you only posting on Marketplace or do you post them on multiple platforms?
I have posted on Craigslist, but that's it.
Okay. And is there other like commonly used ones down in Georgia? I don't know.
I don't, I mean, just, like live events like craft fairs and stuff.
Okay.
If there's others, I'm not aware.
Okay, fair enough. So if they're, I guess, just kind of to the audience more widely, if in your area there's other platforms that people use, we have Craigslist here in Canada. I don't know how often it's used. We have Kijiji as well. That's like a selling platform similar to Craigslist. So posting on multiple platforms, because buyers usually kind of have one platform that they go to when they're buying things, that can be a way to broaden your reach and get more eyes on it. And then renewing the listing as well on Marketplace periodically. I think there's like an automated function now anyways that it kind of prompts you if it's been 2 weeks. Like, has this thing sold? You say no, and they say, do you want to renew it? So that puts it to the top of the pile essentially of the listings again. So that's a good way to get more eyes on it. And one thing that I do, I don't know if it helps or not, because I don't always ask people where they first encountered the listing on Facebook, but I post in like local groups as well for ones that are
Oh, yeah.
relevant. So if there's like a kind of small business or like handmade craft, etc. type of group in your area or in your town or whatever, we have like buy and sell groups and that sort of thing. And then one of the girls that's a local furniture refinisher in our area, she put together, because we have this group kind of just on Instagram where we would chit chat about what we were working on and stuff. She pulled all of us together, made a Facebook group for our area for us to post our pieces for sale. And I don't know how people find it, but it has, I think she did that maybe a year ago, and there's like, I think 2,500 people in there now. People just
Wow.
join, and they're, a group of people that are interested in, even if they're not necessarily buying right now, they're interested in refinished furniture. They appreciate it. They're, willing to pay what it costs, and they don't think it's just a thing that's you're selling out from your house or something that you've used for 20 years. So
Right.
that could be a possibility too. If something like that doesn't exist in your area, there's other people doing that kind of work. Maybe you down the line decide to make something like that. That's a good opportunity to just get more eyes of people that are potential clients that appreciate the work, getting their eyes onto the pieces. And then you could, cross list in there.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I don't know if we have anything, but it's worth looking for sure.
And then just in terms of pieces that you're picking, I think like you mentioned that the sewing table isn't something that people are as often looking for, but it's a notable brand, it's something that if
Hmm.
someone's looking for something like that, that would catch their attention. So I don't think that's a bad thing by any means. Maybe consider that might, because it's such a specific thing, might take a little bit longer just for the right person who's looking for something like that to come across it.
Yeah, the buyer did say I was looking for a singer table. I was like, really?
That's amazing. Yeah, and
It
that's the thing too. Like
exists?
it might take a little bit longer, but I find with those more distinct pieces, or if you're painting it or refinishing it in a certain way, like the people that find it, they've been looking for something specifically like that they haven't been able to find. So they appreciate it so much more, right? They're like,
Hmm.
I can't believe like
So
you
good.
this is
Yeah.
my vision or whatever. So you can do the neutral colors and the things that would kind of appeal to the masses. But every now and then I like to switch it up and do something that's bold color or something like that, because so often people are like, you don't know how long I've been waiting and I've been looking constantly and I've never seen something like this and it popped up and
Hmm.
they're just so appreciative. So it feels cool, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you could choose, in terms of what you're doing, the colors and stuff you chose for your pieces were great. There wasn't anything too out there. Like there were neutral colors. They would fit in lots of decor styles and things like that too. So I think that's a great thing to look for when you're deciding which pieces to skip and which pieces to take on. Looking for, normal sized items that are, for nightstands. It's not super, super oversized or so small that it would be limiting in what kind of spaces it would fit in. Those are the kinds of things that'll make basically it appeal to more people. But
Yeah.
then again, if it's something small, like I had a tiny set of nightstands once, but I just refinished it so it would be for like a little girl's room. And again, they were like, we were looking for something exactly like this for my daughter, painted it pink or whatever. And it was perfect. So just like kind of taking those things into account too, if you get those like wonky or different pieces that you're like, will this sell quickly? Just kind of thinking through what would make most sense, and then hopefully that helps with it too.
Right,
Um,
right.
with nightstands, I find a pair typically sells faster than a single, kind of depends. And then just looking, I just find in our area dressers sell kind of the quickest when they're like
Uh,
neutral, black dressers people love that. I kind of I get bored of
okay.
doing them, but um,
Right.
white, black, grays, kind of you can look at something I do sometimes is going on different furniture retailers' websites and look at their
Yeah.
new arrivals and seeing you get an idea of the trends and colors that are in, looking at the Pantone color of the year and staying in those families of colors.
Okay. Yeah.
Are ways to, in theory, make them sell quicker and have them kind of catch people's eyes.
Hmm.
Do you have any questions based on all that?
That's good stuff. I have a dresser out there on the porch right now. Definitely the biggest piece. It's a 6 drawer dresser and I got it for $40 and
Oh, nice.
yes, but it's not like quality. I'm not going to be able to say solid wood, but it's okay. The drawers go smoothly and I'm just at this point I want it to disappear because it's big. And like I mentioned, I don't have a great like the pollen's gone down, but for a while I could hardly paint something without it getting covered in pollen before it dried. So it was
Oh,
like
no.
hauling things in and out of the shed so they could get painted without pollination.
Yes.
Anyway, that's abated, but it's like I'm wondering if I should just stick to small things because, first of all, we don't have a truck. And so, any advice about getting that dresser flipped quickly would be welcome. I am starting on painting it white. It was sort of orangey varnish
Okay.
on the veneer, but and that's what it was when I got it. And I already have taken off the hardware and filled in the holes and starting to paint it white. But I really want it to flip fast because it's kind of a thorn in my side because of all the space it's taking.
Okay. Yeah, and sticking to the small pieces too might be like moving forward when you're looking for pieces to choose, might be
Yeah.
even if it's just for now as you get the hang of things and want to get things out quickly and make some money so you can put that money back into supplies and whatnot,
Yeah.
is totally fine. And there's so many small items out there too. Taking on those big dressers and stuff isn't a need to do. So I highly recommend leaning into the small stuff and keeping what space you can to yourself. Doing white for a dresser, I think I've never really had a hard time selling a white dresser. Actually, I have one that isn't selling, but it's a very specific style.
Hmm.
If you're going white, prime before painting, I would recommend because there's rarely been a white piece of furniture that I've painted that hasn't had bleed through if I haven't primed it first,
Uh-huh.
or had some sort of staining come through. And then I find white with like gold hardware seems to
Okay.
be like a neutral, just like something modern, sleek, depending on the shape of the dresser. Sometimes there's more intricate, like a base or something that might make it lean to one style or another, but white with gold hardware, I feel like is a good, neutral, easy, appeals to the masses.
Okay.
And for moving things too, I don't know if that's one that you would decide to offer delivery to or not, but I'll mention it just in case it's helpful for anyone else too. I personally don't love moving big pieces because it's going to typically require me to take my husband with me, and then it's like both of our time, and how far is it, and yada yada. It just ends up being more effort than it's worth typically to me. But I always, when it's a big piece, put in an ad. If I know that it's one that won't fit into my vehicle and I don't want there to be the option of delivery, I'll include the fact that at least here, Home Depot and Lowe's offer vans that you can rent
Yeah.
for 20 or 25 bucks for 90 minutes. And I don't think a lot of people know about that unless they've had to kind of use it or something. So
Yeah.
I always throw that in the ad too, because for people who are able to drive but just don't have a vehicle, sometimes they're like, oh, I didn't know that is a thing. Yeah, I'll do that. I'm going to take it. So either if you want to offer delivery and do that, or just pop that information there and maybe it's the difference that gets you the buyer or not, that could be useful.
Yeah, we have that too. Would you put that in the original listing or just if someone messages you saying they have no way to move it?
I don't think it hurts to put it in the listing. I mean, even if someone sees it and it like they're not interested in buying that specific piece, I'm like very much not about gatekeeping knowledge. So put it out there if it's useful for someone to know just in general. That works. I always try and like lean away from delivery if ever possible. So sometimes there's even
Yeah.
pieces that fit in my vehicle, but I won't even, I'll just say pick up in my area. And then
Okay.
if someone happens to message me and say, I really want this piece. I don't have a vehicle. Is there any way you're able to offer delivery? Then, especially if it's been sitting for a bit, I'm more willing to explore that if it fits in my vehicle. But yeah, on the whole, I try to avoid it just because you end up driving all around the city and it
Yeah.
requires a lot of coordination. And I'm lazy. I want to stay home.
Sure. Yeah. Stay home and work on furniture and stuff.
Exactly.
So how long, like I think my husband would get very antsy if I had. He recently asked me to please limit myself to 3 pieces at one time. Because right now I have 5. And I
Mhm.
feel that's reasonable because it's literally like the entrance to the house on the porch is getting narrower. Like
Yeah.
I don't want to infringe on my family's quality of life, but like, how long do I give a piece to sell before lowering the price? Because I think I'm a little, I get a little jumpy and I'm left wondering, could I have sold that for a more satisfying price had I not lowered it like 4 times in one week?
Right. Yeah, I would say it's so hard again. Like you'll get to know your market and the kind of
Mhm.
ebbs and flows as you go. I don't typically, I would say at least 2 weeks if you're able to, if it's not a piece that, like you say, is like impeding in your space and it's a huge issue having it sitting there for a little bit. I'd say a week at minimum just to see what happens. That's every day of the week. So if there's people who are normally checking at certain times, I find a lot of the time on the weekends, like Saturday morning, usually is when I get a lot of like messages because I think people get up, they're just sitting around having their coffee and scrolling.
Mhm.
Um, so if you could leave it for at least a week, maybe 2, even if you look at the analytics or the insights after a week and see what's going on. Is there a bunch of saves? Has it been shared? That kind of stuff.
Mhm.
Then you can reevaluate. And for price decreases, I don't think anything, I never do anything major. Like if it's a big dresser and it kind of has a higher price point, I'd maybe do like 20 bucks at a time, but typically I'm doing like maybe 10, 15, maybe if I
Mhm.
think that will make the difference. And again, I still have some pieces sitting, so maybe that's not the right thing to be doing, but I feel that same thing. If I do a huge price decrease and then it sells, we just always want what we can't have, or we're always like second guessing, right? So we're like, oh, should I only have done it that much? Would I have been able to get more?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So, and I try to just not let myself sit in that headspace for too long either, because at the end of the day, I'm like, that's one less piece. That means I can finish another piece and fill that spot now. Like,
Yeah.
onward and upward. You stop second guessing it as much as it goes on and just kind of like, okay, Sarah, Sarah, what will be, will be.
Yeah. Yeah. I figured I just have a very small sample size right now, so it's hard not to fixate on an individual piece, but I figure if I keep going, eventually I'll be more detached.
Absolutely. And as you go on too, like you start to have those people who are maybe following your Facebook Marketplace profile to see pieces that you post. You might have someone that bought a piece from you before message you and say, I'm interested in a piece that matches this, or are you able to do another one? Like you start to, even if you don't, have like a social media presence, a official business and that kind of thing, you start to have people coming back to you because they're so appreciative of the piece that they got. And also there's been times where I've been so insecure about a piece that I sold and something, maybe an imperfection that I noticed that I was like feeling so scared that the person would be like, no, I don't
Uh-huh.
want it.
Yeah, I
And
hate it.
and they're so excited about it. They're so happy. They don't notice those big, like they're not focused in on the things that we are. They see this awesome piece that they couldn't have bought at the store and that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
try and remember that. It's again, I still have those days where I'm like, oh my God, it's horrible. This is never gonna sell. I'm
Uh-huh.
doing so bad. But it doesn't do us any good to sit in that. So try and just onward and upward and kind of have faith that what's gonna happen is gonna happen.
Yep.
Perfect. Okay, so do you have any other questions or anything else that would be helpful at this time?
I had a lot of fun. So one of my friends goes to these goth markets. I'm not, my style is not goth personally, but I had a lot of fun painting a nightstand black with pink flowers and this skeleton rocking horse. But I'm not sure if it's wise. They hold them quarterly in Atlanta, and I drove up there for that. It was a big day for a big drive for me, but it was so funny to me to do that. But I now stuck with a skeleton rocking horse that I don't know what to do with. Is it wise to keep, because my temptation is to keep making goth stuff
Hmm.
and trying to get it sold at the next goth market, but as a business strategy, it doesn't seem entirely wise.
Yeah, when I saw that, so when you mentioned that you sold it at the goth market, I was like, goth market? Like, what's that? That's so cool. You know
Yeah.
what? It's hard to say. If you love it and you enjoy it and you want to lean into it, I guarantee there's not a whole lot of goth furniture refinishers in your area. Like that could be,
Right.
that could be your niche. So it could be worth trying out. I mean, again, at the end of the day, you can always repaint something too.
True.
If you mentioned maybe waiting till Halloween to list that one. If it's taking
Hmm.
up space now, because Halloween's still a little ways away, you could always try listing it now as is. There might be someone who is doing a theme for their
Yeah.
nursery or something that works with, whether it's, goth or some other thing that a skeleton rocking horse would make sense in. But yeah, no, that's cool. And if there's the market for it, and you enjoy it, I say lean into it.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. And but again, I'll be stuck with it. It's definitely a niche. If no one, I was just lucky someone bought that nightstand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you could always put in the ad too, like worst case, if you're open to it, you could include in the description, list it as is, but put in the description, at the bottom, if this, word it better than this, but if this is the right shape and size for something that you're looking for, but you're not into the current painting of it, I am open to custom refinishing it, send me a message.
Uh-huh.
And then they're like, you know what? I love it. Not really my style, but if it was green, it would be perfect. And you can say, okay, and you can charge, an added fee based because the price that you list at is based on the work you've already done. You say, for an extra whatever, I'm happy to make it how you want. Does that work? Then
Uh-huh.
it's kind of the best of both worlds as long as somebody is clicking into that ad and sees that caveat.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you so much for meeting and for going over this. I hope you found some tangible, actionable things that you can implement in your current ads and as you move forward in this work.
Definitely.
And BusyBees, I hope you learned lots from today's session and maybe picked up some things that you can implement in your side hustles and businesses going forward and help increase your sales. And if you're currently facing a similar challenge like Laura, or you have something else that's going on and you'd like to chat about it one-on-one, or if you have something else going on that you'd like to work through, sometimes it's just, talking it out loud and working through that thing and having someone to spitball ideas over. You can apply for a spot to join me right here, like Laura did today, by clicking the link in the show notes and sign up for a BusyBees in Business strategy session. All right, that's it for now. I appreciate your time, and I will catch you guys next week.